My name is Wesley Hart. I'm 33 years old, and I've spent my whole career reinforcing buildings that are one bad storm away from collapsing, which is a strange job for a man who once left his hometown without saying the one true thing he needed to say. 3 days ago, I drove back into Millbrook Falls for my 15-year reunion. I told everyone, myself included, that I wasn't going. I was standing in the same gym where I used to run drills, holding a cup of punch I had no plans of drinking, when the door swung open, and June Marsh walked back into my life with a little girl's hand wrapped tight around hers. The whole room noticed at once. Conversations kept moving, but nobody's eyes did. Someone near the drinks table whispered a sentence with the words, "Daniel and terrible," in it. I didn't catch the rest. Not yet. June scanned the room like she was checking for exits. Then her eyes found mine and stopped. 3 seconds, maybe 4, long enough that I felt my own pulse. Then the little girl let go of her mother's hand and started walking straight toward me. She couldn't have been more than 6, in muddy rubber boots, crossing the gym floor like she'd rehearsed the route 100 times. She stopped right in front of me, tipped her chin back, and looked at me like she was checking my face against a memory. Then she said it. "Mommy said you'd come." "Come where?" I asked, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. "Here. To the dance. Mommy said the boy from her story might be here tonight. And I found you. So I win." Behind her, June had gone pale. She crossed the distance in 4 fast steps, already apologizing. I told her it was fine. I meant it. She studied me for a second, like she was deciding whether to believe that, and something in her shoulders relaxed. "What did you tell her about me?" I asked. June let out a breath with a laugh trapped somewhere inside it. "There's a story she used to tell her daughter, about a boy who climbed the town water tower on a dare and got his name on the local news because nobody could figure out how he got down. She told her that boy was somebody she used to know. She left out the part where he skipped town 2 weeks later and never called. I remembered that water tower. I remembered how much trouble I'd been in and how June was the only person who thought it was funny instead of reckless. I asked to walk her to her car, mostly because I wasn't ready for this to end. Halfway across the parking lot, headlights swung in fast and blocked June's car against the curb. A woman stepped out before the engine even finished ticking. She looked at June like she'd already won an argument that hadn't started yet. "We need to talk about Friday." June's whole body went rigid, like she was bracing for a wave she'd already been hit by once. "It's 10 o'clock, Constance," she said. "My lawyer sent everything this afternoon. There's nothing left to discuss." Constance Marsh finally looked at me. "And who is this? A friend of June's?" I said, before June could answer. Constance filed that away with a raised eyebrow. "Friday, 10 a.m., Courthouse Annex," she said, still talking to June. "Not me. Bring the financials this time. All of them." Then she was gone, and June stood there gripping her keys so hard her knuckles went white. She explained it to me in the flat voice of someone who's had to explain it too many times already. Daniel's father had set up a family trust that owned the orchard land outright. The house and the cider business were hers, clean, but the land needed Constance's signature for every major decision because she was the surviving co-trustee. And now Constance was petitioning for partial custody of Wren, claiming June was financially unstable and running an unsafe property. If she won, the trust would fall entirely into Constance's hands. And the orchard, along with it. "What exactly is unsafe?" I asked. "The cider barn," June said. "Structural concerns. Constance says it's a hazard for a 6-year-old. 3 separate contractors had already checked it. Nobody found a thing. But something in the back of my mind, The part of me that gets paid to know when a building is lying about how sound it really is, wouldn't let that detail go. I drove them home that night since June's hands were shaking too badly to trust with the wheel. The next morning, I found myself driving back to the orchard again, telling myself it was just to be neighborly. It wasn't. By Wednesday, Wren had already introduced me to a chicken named Detective and asked me, without warning, if I'd loved her mom before her dad did. I told her the truth. Yes. A long time ago, before either of us knew what to do with it. She nodded, satisfied, like she'd just closed the books on something, and went right back to naming chickens. Later, I walked out to the barn alone, because I wanted to see for myself what Constance was so certain about. It took 4 minutes of actually looking, instead of just glancing, to find the rot creeping up the north support beam from an old water leak nobody had caught in time. A cheap fix, if someone had caught it early. Somebody hadn't. I'd seen this exact pattern before, a small problem left to rot because fixing it meant admitting a bigger one underneath. I took photos, close on the damage, wide on the whole structure. Old habits. I didn't know yet how much I'd need them. Inside, I found the maintenance log wedged in a filing cabinet. 3 separate repair requests over 14 months. Each one itemized. Each one denied in the same tight handwriting, signed with the same 2 initials. C.M. I set the log on the kitchen table and let June read it before I said a word. She went quiet, quieter than I'd heard her all week. Then she called her friend Priya, who happened to be a lawyer who'd clearly been waiting for exactly this kind of break. Priya read the denied requests twice. "This isn't just useful," she said. "This is the whole case. Constance says the barn is unsafe because June is negligent. This proves the barn is unsafe because Constance refused to sign the checks. That's not negligence. That's sabotage with a paper trail attached." June sat down hard, like her legs had finally been given permission to stop holding her up. She looked at me. "You weren't even supposed to be here for this." I told her I was glad I was. I meant it more than the words let on. That night, an email from my supervisor sat waiting in my inbox. A new job out west. Answer needed by Friday. I read it twice and didn't reply, uncomfortably aware that some part of me was already planning to take it and disappear again, the same way I always had. Thursday morning brought a new legal filing from Constance's lawyer, calling me an unstable, transient male influence with no ties to the child. Priya called it a scare tactic. June didn't look unbothered by it. She almost talked herself out of confronting Constance altogether, standing in the kitchen with the maintenance log in her shaking hands, saying maybe it was safer to let the lawyers handle it from a distance. I didn't push. I only told her that Wren had asked me earlier if grown-ups ever get brave on purpose. I told Wren sometimes they do. I said I'd like it if June proved me right. She grabbed her keys. Constance let us in, already braced for a fight. Priya laid the maintenance log on the coffee table and let Constance read it herself. The room went dead silent while she scanned her own handwriting, date after date, denial after denial. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its edge. I told myself the trust needed to stay solvent, that holding the line meant something would be left for Wren. I told myself June wasn't careful enough. I didn't say I wasn't the one making that barn dangerous. For a moment, I thought she might dig in anyway. Instead, June spoke first, steady as I'd ever heard her. "I've struggled every single day for a year and a half, and I'm still here. Struggling isn't the same as failing, Constance. You'd know that if you let yourself remember the years after your husband died." Right then, Wren appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, asking if she could show Grandma Constance the chicken she'd finally named. Waffles had won, apparently by a landslide. Constance looked at her for a long moment, and something in her whole posture gave way. "Fine," she said, voice unsteady. "Show me the chicken. I'll withdraw the petition in the morning." We drove home with Wren asleep in the back, worn out from being proven right about a chicken. June and I sat on the porch afterward, the orchard breathing around us in the dark. I told her about the tailgate, 15 years ago, the sentence I'd built and swallowed instead of saying. "I'll call you instead," I'd told her. And I never called. She was quiet a long time. Then she told me she'd waited 4 months for that call before she stopped checking the machine. She told me she loved Daniel completely, and that loving him hadn't closed the door she'd left open for a boy who once climbed a water tower. Her hand found mine on the porch boards, and neither of us pulled away. I called my supervisor the next morning and turned down the job out west. Constance withdrew both petitions before the hearing ever happened. 6 months later, I was rebuilding that barn's north wall myself, with Wren handing me the wrong-sized wrench on purpose because she thought it was funny. Constance started coming by on Sundays, bringing Wren books that used to belong to Daniel, asking real questions instead of handing down verdicts. 3 weeks before I climbed that ladder to check the last of the flashing, June said yes to me on that same porch, with my grandmother's ring sitting a little crooked on her finger because I'd guessed the size wrong. Wren stood at the bottom of the ladder that Sunday, hands on her hips, dead serious, and told me I had to tell her whole kindergarten class the water tower story. The whole thing this time, not the version with the second half missing. I told her I would. Every word of it, all the way to the end. If this story hit you right in the chest, you already know why it belongs here on Aftermath Tales. Hit subscribe so you never miss what comes next, and tell me in the comments what you'd have said back on that tailgate 15 years ago.